Chapter 2. The Road of Faith. Just as goods flowed along the arteries of the Silk Roads that linked the Pacific and the Mediterranean with Central Asia, India, and Persian Gulf, so too did ideas. And among the most powerful ideas in existence were those concerning the divine, trying to understand the role of God, the origin and meaning of life, as well as the connection of humankind with nature and with each other. These were questions of real importance. Beliefs and creeds, gods and cults, priests and local rulers all jostled with each other. In the ancient world, societies were eager for explanations about everyday events combined with the supernatural, and faith offered solutions to a range of problems. Why was there a drought? Why had a loved one died? Why should one's neighbours be treated well? There were many alternatives to choose from. Religions that were Indic in origin, such as Hinduism, Jainism, and Buddhism, spread out along the Silk Roads to compete with those that had roots in Persia, such as Zoroastrianism and Manichaeism. From further west came Judaism and Christianity, and later Islam. The stakes were high. Triumph on the battlefield was seen as proof of protection from above. The equation was as simple as it was powerful. A society that favoured the right god or gods did well. Those that did not were worshipping false idols and were doomed to suffer the consequences. Faiths did not just compete with, but also learned and borrowed from one another. Alexander the Great and his armies, for example, brought their religion with them from Greece during their rule, setting up temples all over the heart of Asia. This in turn challenged Buddhists who had previously been very successful in spreading their beliefs from northern India. Suddenly, they found themselves threatened by new religious practices, as well as increasingly common images and statues of Greek gods. Buddhists were forced to adapt. In their most basic and traditional form, the teachings of the Buddha were straightforward, focusing on the route to peace, nirvana, through a personal spiritual journey. But faced with the new arrival of Greek beliefs, Buddhists built shrines and temples of their own. They set up statues of Buddha and in due course encouraged people not to live their faith privately, but to celebrate their faith together and with musical accompaniment. Competition had forced them to react, adapt, and innovate. It proved very successful too. Around the 1st century AD, the spread of Buddhism along trade routes accelerated rapidly thanks to monks, travellers, and above all, the Sogdian merchants. These traders undertook long-distance journeys deep into the heart of Asia and China, trading high-value goods. Some even carved their names into rocks alongside images of Buddha in the hope that their journeys would be safe and profitable. The spread of Buddhism led to the building of impressive monuments such as the 40 monasteries surrounding Kabul, one of which had marble walls, golden doors, and a floor made of solid silver. Complexes of cave monasteries were also created in western China at places like Dunhuang and Oisil, where you could find halls for worship, spaces for meditation, and extensive living quarters. In due course, huge statues were carved out of cliffs. The statues of Buddha in the cliffs at Bamiyan, in what is now Afghanistan, made an impressive statement to all who passed by. There were famous monks like Faxian, who journeyed from China through Central Asia to the birthplace of the Buddha in what is now Nepal. He moved on to India, where he marveled at the sophistication and prosperity of Hindus and Hinduism, before heading south to Sri Lanka by sea and then back home. Buddhism was not alone in its mission to spread and adapt along the Silk Road. Christianity was immensely successful too, as followers of Jesus Christ and his teachings made their way from Palestine across Asia. Soon, Christian communities living in cities in the east, such as Mosul and Basa, in what is now Iraq, and later in what is now Sri Lanka, and in China, were so large that they needed bishops to oversee the priests who ministered to their flocks. Although we think of Christianity with its close connections to the continent of Europe, it gathered large numbers of followings in Asia and North Africa too, where countries like Egypt still have a large Christian population today. The spread of religions was not welcomed by all. For every winner, there is always a loser. Some rabbis did not like everyone who adopted the Jewish faith and compared converts to annoying scabs that itch. The attitude, however, did not stop the spread of Judaism in southern Arabia, where the population of one region, including its ruling dynasty, became Jewish. Arguments about religion were most keenly felt throughout the mighty empire of the Sassanians, ruled by a powerful dynasty that controlled much of the territory, once belonging to ancient Persia, and more besides. In the Sasanian Empire, the main faith was Zoroastrianism, a religion based on the teachings of a great prophet who lived around 1000 BC and taught that the world was divided between good and bad, light and darkness, order and chaos. The advance of other beliefs upset Zoroastrian priests like Kadur, who led a savage persecution of Christians and Buddhists, as well as Hindus, Jews, and others. He was very pleased by his success and commemorated his violent achievements in triumphant inscriptions that we can still read today. The Sassanians were threatened by the advance of Christianity when it took hold in neighbouring kingdoms, because they were worried it might spread further. Armenia was one place they were worried about, especially after what happened to their king, Tiridates. It is said that the American ruler turned into a pig with a snout and tusks started to wander about the field naked. He was miraculously cured by St. Gregory and converted, changed his faith to Christianity as a result. That was one thing. When the Roman Emperor Constantine looked up at the sun just before a battle a short time later and saw a cross with words behind it saying he would conquer all if he adopted Christianity, he promptly did so and won the battle too, luckily. Constantine was an enthusiastic promoter of his new faith, overseeing the Nicene Creed, the Christian statement of faith that is still in use today. Towards the end of his reign, Constantine started thinking about how he might spread Christianity beyond Rome's border. He even sent letters to the Sasanian Shah, the ruler, telling him to protect the Christians who lived in his finest provinces, or face the consequences. It was a strong message and the repercussions would be monumental. Rome had long been a great rival of the Sasanian Empire in the east, with the two sides often engaged in bitter warfare. Only a few decades earlier, one attack had gone dreadfully wrong and had resulted in the capture of Valerian, one of Constantine's predecessors as emperor. Valerian's punishment was to live out his days being used as a human footstool for the Shah to mount his horse, before being stuffed with straw after his death and gleefully paraded around the Sasanian Empire. Constantine's message to the Sasanian Shah sounded like a threat. To the Shah, it seemed as if the emperor intended to spread Christianity by force, if necessary. In the end, its consequences were the opposite of Constantine's wishes. Egged on by those wanting to defend Zoroastrian beliefs, the Shah thirsted for the blood of the saints and gave orders for bishops and priests to be murdered by the dozen. Religions were always about more than just faith. They were also about politics and success. It was easy to be tolerant and feel comfortable about those with different views, customs, and ways of living when things were going well. But when times were tough, perhaps because of climate change, economic upheaval, or military threat, Minorities were always the first to suffer. Finding a way to cooperate and live harmoniously together could be, and still can be, surprisingly difficult.